So, hey, it's the new year.
Yeah, happy New Year.
I got to say, you've forgotten in the new year. Oh, wait, or is this your New Year resolution? Say hey first.
Well, I mean, sometimes I like to say hey first. Sometimes you get to say hey first. We're equitable here. Everybody gets to say hey at different times.
I really wanted my New Year's resolution to never say hello again. Just start every conversation. No hellos, no goodbyes, no small talk. Just right into
just jump in with a couple of really strong expletives and like go after people's moms and then just straight to business.
We are wasting too much time with hello.
I think hello's nice. I like a hello. I like to find out how you're doing.
I say that. And then every time I post something in the morning and I don't say hello first, I feel really bad. Then I come back and there's like a 20-minute me saying good morning because I feel bad about it.
Well, yeah, you got that Midwestern kind of, it's an affable state, Ohio.
I don't care myself of it. I want to get to the hard charging, hard nosed, jump right in.
Look, you're not a My Girl Friday type. You're not a hard as nails cub reporter at a 40s newspaper.
I could be.
I mean, look, it's not too late. It's never too late. But today we are going to talk about something that people don't often talk about.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Money.
Money is one of those things. My Midwest sensibility says you're not allowed to talk about this ever.
It turns out
I don't even think it's allowed to tell my mom what I made.
I thought I could get in trouble.
Yes.
Turns out you can't. Anyway.
But for here, one of the things that I think a lot of people don't think about is when we first started the studio way back, was, hey, how you get funded changes what you make. And it does it in a dramatic way. And it changes how you think about growing a studio, building a studio, and shipping the game and what the game should be. And so because of that, we went with what's called equity funding, where we went out to some investors. They gave us some money and said, yeah, we think you guys are going to make cool stuff. And somehow in the future, later, we'll make money. We have no idea how they're going to ever make money.
Well, hold on. But you said you didn't just come out and say, hey, give me money. You said, hey, we have an idea for this. Here are some things that we think are important as a studio. We think that social gaming is really important. Turns out the pandemic kind of bore that out. I think that thesis is confirmed. And you said, hey, we think that we want to make games for large audiences and we want to make games that a lot of people can play over a long period of time that we can keep updating for a long time. Like those are all three important ideas. So it's not like,
Yes. No. And so it's always actually awkward when you're doing it because you have your practical, hey, this is what we're going to make. And then your last slide has to be, now, what are the thoughts you have for if this all worked out in the future, where you'll be in 10 years? And you got to put those down and say those out loud, which is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
For me, but for me, it's always like iteratives. Take a step, go forward. Yes, we have this goal. We have this thing we're going for. And I really believe in the power of games as a way to connect people. And you can be from all different walks of life, from all different countries, and you jump in a game together. You laugh over something that happens. You are friends.
Yeah.
You can go from there and everything just builds on that. So, that was really the original thesis of like, how do you start building a company that is just making not just co-op games? Because co-op is very limited in that you can be social and competitive games as well, but some competitive games themselves are not being social, where you end up having all this really negative energy and you're like, oh, even when you win.
Yeah.
So how do you make games that embrace people hanging out with friends and playing? And so that's what we wanted to make, and then really start building a community around that. And that's our beginning of our community over at discord.gg/Stray Bombay. Played with them a bunch over break. Like it's fun hanging out with everybody.
Played our game with them over break.
Yes.
Yeah,
it reminds me of why I'm doing this. Like it is absolutely fun to play with complete strangers online and have a good time.
Well, so how you when you were starting out, you went with equity funding, but there are other ways to raise money. I think before we talk about that stuff, it's a good idea to think about like what your costs are making games. And for most people, most studios, the big cost is people, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, because like it takes a bunch of people to make a game. We're a small studio at 20 people. There are obviously smaller studios. I mean, I like the folks who made Stardew, and there's all sorts of examples of like single to 5 dev houses that have made unbelievable games. But the kind of game we're making, we needed more people than that. And people cost money. Like even programmers and artists who can make games, who can do the work that is in games, especially since we tend to hire senior folks, are expensive, and that burn rate adds up really fast. The money you spend on all of your expenses is the burn rate.
Yeah. Yeah. So just for the term burn rate is just take everything your monthly costs. And again, it's overwhelmingly people in the US, it is payroll and insurance, healthcare insurance. The difference between really lousy healthcare insurance and the most amazing healthcare insurance for a group of 20 people is so little, it's not even worth considering. So we have like really nice healthcare. And then it's also how do you treat each other and how do you think of the company? So there's a way to do it where like, hey, I'm Chet Felicek. You may have heard of me. I worked on these games. I'm going to make all the money. I'm going to hire people who will just listen to me. And that's not really fun. That's a lot of pressure too. And I'm lazy. So instead, if you hire people and say, hey, you're going to have a big impact on this game. You're going to own whole sections of this game. I'm going to give you feedback, but you are going to decide, not me. And we're all going to work together on this. And you know what? We're also going to say, hey, if you've worked 20 hours or 20 years in the industry as an engineer and you've worked 5 years as an artist, the hours in your life are still worth the same. The hours you're away from your family, the hours that you're working, they're worth the same. And so we're trying to pay everybody almost the same. Ends up market reasoning.
It's complicated.
There's a little bit of difference, but that's what we try. And then we have profit sharing that is the same idea of it just doesn't matter. I signed the same papers everybody else did. We get paid the same. I actually get the lowest salary in the company. And it's all because and everyone has equity in the company. And it's always like, we just want to have senior people working together, excited about what they're working on, because I think that's how you get the best work out of everybody, where they're like, oh my God, this is my game. Like, I can't let this go out bad. I need to go put this good thing in, but also not crunching. Like we're launching in
11 days.
11 days,
10 days.
And we took last week off, not to say that we don't love our community and want to make a really great game, but equally it was the holidays. People should be with their family. And so it's that balance and trying to do that. But with that, it ends up salaries add up really quickly. And so $1 million sounds like a lot of money. And you put 10 developers getting paid a reasonable salary in the industry, and that does not even make you through like a quarter of the year.
Yeah, you're looking at a couple $100,000 a month in a lot of cases.
Yes.
So yeah, your $1 million, you say you've saved for 15 years and you want to fund your own indie game. It doesn't go as far as it used to.
Yes.
So then the traditional way you would go out and get money for a game, if you were a person who'd made some tech demos, you participated in game jams, whatever, you had some stuff in your portfolio, you'd take it to a publisher at DICE or GDC or something like that. And you'd say, okay, I have this idea for a game. Here's the thing that we put together, the gray box, whatever, to demo. Will you write us a check and we'll put it on console X or Y, whatever. X is a bad letter to use for consoles for obvious reasons. Anyway, the point is, then the publishers theoretically would say, yes, we love this idea. Here is the budget that we think you should have to finish this out. And you have X number of months and you have to deliver us these things at such and such a time frame. And then they would look at those milestones and give you feedback and say, okay, well, we really like the main character, but we think that this is maybe not what you're looking for. And you should really consider focusing on blah, 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 blah. And like at that point, you're in a kind of cooperative relationship with the game publisher, which works for a lot of people, a lot of studios.
But some of the things that people don't realize about game publishers also is, one, they want you to spend a lot of money. It sounds weird, but so before we started, we talked with agents, we talked with publishers, we talked with investors, we talked with platform holders, we talked with some people who are like, hey, why don't we're a big company, we are going to just have you start our studio in Seattle under our name, and all of these different kind of things. And I wanted people working on this to have a sense of ownership of what they were working on, where they really owned it. And so some publishers are like, hey, you own the IP, except if you want to make a second game, you got to make it with us.
Yeah.
Or if you decide not to make it with us, we get to make it and you have no say in it. Like there's a bunch of weird, what they call entanglement around that, right? And then the other idea is clawback, which is, hey, sure, we're going to give you all this money, but then as soon as you publish, we're going to start just tearing money back. So you better make a lot of money right away, because we're just going to start making it back all of our money that we just gave you out. Which, in a way is fair. They gave you a bunch of money. But like they want you to be big because they're like, you're not worth our time unless you're big enough and spending enough money. But the problem then is you grow really quickly. And like for us, we were 6 people for a really long time because we wanted to find the core of our game. We understood Left 4 Dead. We understood co-op games. So, okay, but what's the thing that makes ours different? How does ours feel different? We can have some designs on paper, but you want to put some things in game. And so to be able to just try things and throw them out because the cost is just, one person's time, and you didn't have to build the model, put it in the game and get committed to it and all these things. We can be way more flexible. And during all of that, as you kind of alluded to with the publishers, since we went with investment, nobody said anything. They would check in on the game. They would see it and they'd be like, cool, we trust you. We don't know how to do this. Like no one ever was like, oh, you got to change this. Oh, you shouldn't have this character. You shouldn't do these names or whatever. Everyone's just supportive. They were great feedback on ideas and we would bounce it off of them. They're smart people, but we were not beholden to them.
Well,
and that was important.
And that's the, like, the big thing about equity investment is that they look at the people that they're investing in and the ideas, and they trust you as the person who has the business plan and the design ideas and the game that you're making to be good at that and to know what you should be doing. Like we've played with our investors a bunch over the time that I've been here, and at no point has anybody said, oh, you know what, I think this would be a lot better game if it had pirates instead of aliens. Or you don't get that kind of feedback. And I mean, that is not a specific example, but I've heard horror stories of, hey, we're 12 months into development on this thing and we took it to the publisher check-in and the publisher's like, this is really good, but you know what? Monster X is trending down this year. We want to go with vampires instead. And you're like, oh, well, okay. That sounds bad.
No, we don't get that. We have the freedom to really kind of try some things. And that also is the freedom to do something strange. It's a really hard sell to say, hey, we're going to release a game that has no difficulty. Why? Because the game's going to adapt to it. So it's really hard for people not to see those things. And you also see this even with investors. Like our investors are people who believe in us and believe in kind of the vision we have of what we're trying to do. And we'll tell them some of those crazy thoughts. But other people would be like, well, is this an esport? No. Okay, well, we do esport stuff. Hey, fair enough. Cool, right? Like good friends there. Whatever. So like everybody has their own different things. So it's even not like there's this pool of investors and everyone just blindly invests in you. People invest in different things they look for. And a lot of people look for social. And I think back when we originally pitched, the idea of social gaming wasn't so prevalent in people's heads. And now it's really clearly like, yes, as we've all gotten older and we played games to begin with, we play games online. And that doesn't just mean Facebook games as social games, but instead it means things like first-person shooters and, co-op games. And so
Animal Crossing, birthday parties. And like, we've all done that over the last year and a half. It makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah. But then it also, I think one of the big things that people don't think about is it also, all of this really impacts how you release a game. So now if you do publisher's giving you a bunch of money up front. What they want to see is a bunch of sales day one.
Because they want to recruit that investment back as fast as they can, right? Their goal is get the money in, get the money back out, and then put in the next title so they can keep the churn going and keep their shareholders happy.
Yeah, and they may have some long-term goals that they hope for, and there's like all that, but all that's bonus. What they really want is like within that first month to really see this big giant spike of sales and go down. Where when we talk to our investors, we're all like, hey, we're going to release the game, and it is not going to go like this. It's going to go like this. It is going to be a long growth over time because we're going to go early access because we want to release the smallest possible game we can that gives enough so that people give us feedback so that we can actually make it with the community. Because I think it's really valuable to not just go blind and say, oh, you know better than the community, but instead listen to the community, play with them, take a look at the statistics, look at how they talk about the game, and then grow and build that game over time. And so that's why we're doing early access and game preview on Xbox.
So I mean, it's like I can't overemphasize that part enough because it's really an important idea. Like if you're taking a traditional publisher model, they are literally looking for a huge spike on launch and then a tail over like 3 months. And then the next time there's a Steam sale, the game's going to be $15 or, a quarter price at least. And they're going to keep trying to get those little bumps and humps and dips all the way down until you're in the dollar bin, a year down the line. Whereas, we want to build a game that we launch small and we grow gradually over time. And as we get more and more content in, more and more mechanics layered on, more cool stuff added to the game, we hope we'll reach more and more people each time we do a big update. And the funding model that you guys chose early on gives us the flexibility to do that because we don't have to have we don't have to have that day one 2 million people playing or whatever your number is these days. I don't even know.
Yeah, because what you really do, you want actually a smaller community at the start, because you want to have less noise about it and more like talking about it. And that may mean for some people, hey, I don't play early access games. I want to wait till you're finished. First of all, we're never going to be finished. We're going to keep updating the game, but I get it. Like there's some chunk of thing that we call 1.0 at some point, right? And so for those people, yeah, that's right. And so it's early access and game preview lets us signal that to those people that, hey, yeah. But if you want to see the game and know that you've gotten it at this price, and then it's just going to keep getting added to it, more content is going to come to it, and you want to occasionally play with your friends and give feedback, that's great. And also just give feedback now. Like we were playing all last week with the community, and there's just pages and pages of feedback and ideas they have. Not all of them will implement, but it's always interesting to hear that feedback and how people are thinking about it. And then also it's really great for modders to hear that feedback, because if we don't implement something, they may be like, oh, that's the mod I'm going to make, because if people are talking about that, that's super interesting to me. So that's kind of the balance that we can do. And that's also, the other part of it that is harder, I think, to make the case for under publisher is how much modding we're going to allow, and how much we embrace that and saying that community is really important to us, and that they should be able to have an impact in the game, and they should be able to have an impact in what players are playing and enjoying, and not being so precious of like, oh my God, you can't touch this. This is our IP. Oh, it's so like, we're going to go take this to Netflix and make a TV series. No, I don't care. Like, have fun with it. Like the minute it's out there, it's yours to have fun with and play with. And if you have feedback to give us on it, give us feedback. If you want to mod it. If you want to make something with it, make something with it, and let's just all play it. And so to us, that's really an important way to think about it. And so that was one of the things like the investors just embraced. They're like, okay, this is long-term. We're going to get you set up and going. But then at some point, the very important thing is you've got to sell the game to customers so that you're listening to customers, that they're playing it and they're enjoying it. And you've created that loop, and it's not self-sustained off of some big budget given to you ahead of time, but instead it's actually with the players, and you're kind of on the rope for listening to them and building something together with them.
Well, and that's exactly it. And it's interesting because like a lot of our investors are folks that look at like long term rather than short. A lot of investors are looking for a 1 or 2 year turn and explosive growth. The investors you hear about are the, hey, we want explosive growth on a 2 year turn, and we want an app that has 1 billion users, and whatever Silicon Valley nonsense. The folks that we worked with are I don't want to say pragmatic because that's not exactly right, but they're thoughtful, and they're looking for long term success, and that's what they wanted to fund, what they wanted to set up, and that's what they were excited about.
The one other part of it that's a little bit different for us is early on we talked with Microsoft, and Microsoft is not our publisher. They're licensing the game from us. It's technically, you won't notice a difference. You get to play it on Xbox and Game Pass, but for us, there is a difference. But they were really supportive early on before they'd ever seen anything. They're like, yeah, this sounds great. We get, we've talked with you a bunch. We know you a bunch. We know a bunch of people over there. Chris Charla has been in the industry forever. I've known him for a long time. And it's like, okay, we'll make this bet with you as well. And so it's been great working with them as well. And now as we're getting closer to launch, I think everything's coming together in what we had envisioned way back. And people are looking at it and going, oh my God, I get why there's not a difficulty level. There maybe should be an intensity level. I will agree with that, because sometimes you just want to kick back and have a beer and not pay attention. But the game kind of adapts anyways. But still, like there's that, sure. But I mean, for the spectacle it is, for the crazy stuff that happens, I had something happen to me. I have 500 hours in game on Steam, 100 hours on other platforms, another couple hundred hours in editor, and I saw something happen for the first time ever that I just couldn't stop laughing. And it's just like, that still happens, and that's all coming together. And so it's great being able to share the game with those partners now, getting people to play it. Now this week we get to have people streaming it, and they'll be out there playing. And so all of those people that kind of took that bet, getting to see it all come together. Because even when it's fun, it's been fun for day 5 of us ever starting. It's really fun now. It's really good.
It's ramped up so much in the last like 3-4 months. Like there was a moment in like late summer, early fall when it just kind of started clicking, and you went from having like an occasional really good game and like pretty good games the rest of the time to like really amazing moments in each game. Now something cool happens. So
and that's really hard to explain to like a publisher or somebody else who's looking at the game itself only, because you're like, oh, you're just making another one of those, a 4-player co-op game. And you're like, they're not all the same. They're radically different. It's kind of like if you look at Apex versus PUBG. They're both battle royales, but they're radically different games in a lot of ways. And so the same thing with 4-player co-op. That's a really broad description that a lot of things can go inside of. And so where we go inside is we're about having fun. We're about laughing. We're about joy. I hate the word joy, but it really...
Joy's a good word. Don't hate joy.
It is the word that I think describes us well. But it is like that. It's not gloomy. It's not dark. People are making jokes. We're having fun. And like that's the kind of the world that we wanted to create and give people to live in it, play it, and then give us feedback.
Yeah, and so you touched on this before, but we're launching with 3 episodes. I think each of the episodes represents kind of one of the core, like, I don't want to say design goals because it's not exactly it, but like core ideas for what an episode could look like for us.
Yes.
And obviously there's other ideas in the hopper. We have more stuff coming in season 0, which is what we're launching with. But this shows you like the different ways we can do holdouts and the kind of it's the first pass at a toolbox for what we have to make the game fun and challenging and exciting for players. So we want to know what people think about that stuff. We want to know what ideas it spawns for you. And we really just kind of want to see where the game goes next.
Well, because it'll be really interesting if we've play tested episode 4 and 5 already, but we have not shared it with the community. So at some point we'll have to decide, do we share it when it's still not arted? Do we wait till it's arted? Where do we start sharing that, and where do we go with it? And a lot of that'll be based on feedback and talking with the community.
Yeah, and I mean, my guess is that we'll probably do some early stuff that's private, and we get people in on Steam branches and stuff like that, so they can see what the unarted version looks like. But I mean, I don't know. I played. PUBG did some real weird experiments a couple years ago where they just started releasing maps that are all gray boxed and let people go in and play them and see how it worked. And like it was as a person in that community, it was really interesting to get to go along on that ride with them. So, I mean, the nice thing is we don't have any publisher telling us what we can and can't do. So if we want to do that, we can just put it out there and see what you all think. So,
yep. And then I think that also the interesting thing to remember is we are a small team. We are releasing the game next week. With that, there'll be some things that aren't the way we want them ourselves. And so you'll see refinements in matchmaking, what it means to host games, what it means to play in different scenarios. Like all of that stuff will be coming. Some of it will be based on your feedback. Some of it will be, we have a kind of like a challenge track that is kind of like an engagement thing where it gives you different little activities to do during the week. Like what is good ones? What are bad ones? What feels like too much?
What's too easy? What's too hard? Which ones are fun? Which ones are not fun?
Yeah. I mean, I've challenged, Ryan's working on that, and I've challenged him that one of them, the community should hate, in the sense of like, you need to have the delta be great enough of what you're trying so that you understand you don't actually want the community to hate it, but you want to predict that the community is going to hate it. Not because like it's punishing and stupid, but you're like, oh, this is really hard to do, or this is challenging, or you have to play this weird way to do this. And we might find the community loves that. And then we should do more of those. But if you aren't willing to do that risk and try that, you're not going to find that out.
Well, and that applies to a lot of stuff too. At some point, we're going to roll out some updates that people really dislike. I mean, we're planning on updating a couple times a month, I think is the current strategy. As always, it is a small team and we're new at this, so that may change, but that's the plan out of the gate. And yeah, I mean, it's all we can ask is that people go on the ride with us, I guess, and we'll do the best we can.
For the most part, you will like our updates. Most of our updates will be good. Yeah. I imagine there's going to be some tuning that happened after the first one, as we start to see how people use perks and stack, because there's this moment of perks is a great example of like, first time you play it, you don't know what the hell to choose. You're kind of confused. You pick the obvious ones, and later you're like, oh, wait a minute, this one I could do. Okay.
And then you realize this, I should grab this. And yeah.
You do it. It's always kind of like, first you learn them, then you learn how they impact each other on your own. And you learn as a team how they impact across and how you should build together. And then you can do some cool stuff, and it's pretty fun.
I expect when we add the moist update later this year, people are going to be pretty up. It's going to be divisive. That's my big prediction.
Moist?
The moist update. Some people really love moist stuff. Some people not so much.
The word does not bother me at all. I'm
Well, that's
confused
good.
by it. It's an accurate description.
Yeah, I mean, look, do you
Of
want
the
a dry
state.
cake? No, thank you, sir. I will take a moist Duncan Hines cake mix all day long.
I like to take Dunkin' Hines cake mix, but
I mean, look, sometimes you got to make a cake. Anyway, so yeah,
um,
that's it. That's how we like. That's what we think about money. There's all sorts of other ways you can make money to raise money to make games. You can live on ramen and for years on end, and
also,
like,
so none of this is in a vacuum. One of the great things of when I worked at Valve, I would go talk to studio heads all the time around the world and ask them things like, how do you do pay? How do you do compensation? How do you do bonuses? How did you get started? How did you do this? And then I still talk with a bunch of them now. I still talk with a bunch of indie developers now. If you are somebody who's looking to start a studio or want to talk through this, reach out to me. Twitter's probably the easiest way, just my name at Twitter. And DM me. My DMs are open, and always happy to chat. I talk with new studios and developers. God, there's a lot of big studios are losing people. A
yeah,
lot of studios getting started this year in particular, and I probably talk to someone new every couple of weeks. And always happy to do that because I learn a lot from it as well. And not to say I know everything, but I now know who you should talk to, who might know the right answer.
well, I mean, you can't talk to too many people when you're thinking about doing that. Is the thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think that's a good place as any to wrap it up. Yeah,
One last,
yeah.
if you go to straybombay.com, we are hiring. We
Oh
are
yeah.
expanding a little bit. Again, we like to grow and then coalesce and make sure our culture stays good and grow again. So we have roles from environment art, always programming, to there's QA role.
Gonna post a
There's
social media person soon. I hope.
social media person, another animator we're going to be hiring, technical artist. Yeah, there's just a lot of different roles as we're expanding where we realize having more than one person there would be helpful.
Yeah, there's always more stuff to make. It turns out.
Yes.
So that's at straybombay.com. The game's out in 9-ish days, probably from when you see this. The 13th of January. We'll be out at 10 a.m. You can find us on Game Pass. You can find us on Xbox. You can find us on Steam, EGS. We're on all the Xboxing. I think that's the collective noun for Xbox.
Cross play between them all.
Cross play with everything. Yeah. Fingers crossed, Chad. Fingers crossed.
Awesome.
That'll do it for us. Come join the community at Stray Bombay on the Stray Bombay Discord at discord.gg/Stray Bombay. That's where we hang out most of the time. And
Yep.
we will hopefully see you all on the ISO load. Yeah.
Whoop, my hand's disappearing.
Your hand blurred. You got no hand.